Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at chapter 4 of Peopleware. It's called Quality If Time Permits. So the authors start off this shorter than average chapter with an interesting insight that in the balance between quality and quantity, just about everyone prefers to put out better quality work over a high quantity of a product that's just all right. In fact, that happens to be one of the things that goes into individuals determining our self-esteem, right? People really value quality. And so if a manager finds himself in the situation where he's pressuring people to get more done in less time, and it's having the effect of compromising quality, chances are that not only will the product suffer, but the unintended extra cost is that it will elicit a negative emotional reaction from the staff. Because they feel like they're being asked to compromise some part of themselves or their values for the sake of a deadline, and that's not a good feeling. That's not a good feeling. That has a lot of unintended consequences in the long run. So one of the sections is called the flight from excellence, which is, wow, what a name, right? So deadlines, or at least ones that are too aggressive, are extremely damaging to a team's morale as well as the product's quality. We just kind of went over that, and it's a hard thing to balance because, of course, it's conceivable that if given an unlimited amount of time to build a project, then the staff would take an unlimited amount of time to finish it. And although the pursuit of perfection is a great tagline for Lexus, business doesn't actually permit unlimited time and human effort, going into building something. And so as a manager, you're always doing that trade-off between quantity and quality. And that's a challenging spot to be in because for the most part, your customers would almost certainly accept a product today that's 95% good over a product that's 100% perfect a month from now. From their standpoint, they probably couldn't see the absence of the 5%, whether that's something like test coverage or API calls that aren't completely optimized yet or what have you. It's a very abstract kind of under the hood things that doesn't affect the customer experience at all, except maybe the API calls one. But you know what I mean, right? And so the unfortunate thing is that you have to balance that with the fact that a code base that stays on that level will be totally unmanageable in a couple years. I'm sure you've seen code bases, and I've certainly seen code bases too, where whole swaths of it they just look like they were done halfway and never gone back and updated. And it's nearly impossible to make progress on those projects. And it's sort of a creeping issue too, because it's not like you wake up one day and productivity is at zero. It happens slowly, and people even become accustomed to a new normal, and that's just how it goes. On top of that, maybe the company is growing, so you hire more people. And from a cursory perspective, it seems like productivity in total is still growing, but on an individual level, people are getting increasingly waterlogged. And, and then what happens if people feel like they're getting waterlogged long enough? They leave, you hire new people who are seeing, an unmanageable code base for the first time. So that's sort of like the long run kind of the effect. But you also have to get things out in a timely manner because you need to have customers and make them happy, from a business perspective. So does that mean that balancing these two is I guess you could say, Sisyphean task? And I thought about this for a while, and I think the answer is probably. It probably is. It it doesn't have to be, but if you don't navigate that tension extremely carefully, you're going to get degrees of one or the other, and you might end up getting one or the other, a lot of one or the other, and that's also maybe not a great outcome either. So if you're if we're kind of stuck in this potentially no-win situation where you either do wrong by your coders if you let quality suffer, or you do wrong by your customers if you deliver slowly, then what can you do? What's the answer? For me personally, I think that in the earliest stages of a product, You unfortunately have to take a hit to quality because you need customers to keep the business going. But at some point, you hit an inflection point of having customers and they're generally happy with the product, and internally your business is at some level of homeostasis. Once you get there, you need to, like, as soon as you hit that point, ideally, you need to have a feature freeze for a while and just improve the existing code. That could be, taking some weeks, taking a couple months to just improve the existing code base. And, your long-term outcome is going to be a lot better. People are going to be a lot happier with that. But that suggestion is it's a hard value proposition to sell to upper management because it seemingly means no new value is getting created since the product doesn't change from an end user's perspective. But you still have to do it. You still have to do it unless you want to get that outcome that I was talking about, a couple minutes ago. And really, to be fair, you should feel good doing this because you know that you're making an investment in developer happiness in the future, and probably making an investment in lower turnover for your team, things like that. Stuff that's even upper management is going to see the value of those things, of more productivity per worker, of less turnover on net, and so on. People like that, and you have to present it to yourself or to others in that way, as that is the value that's being gotten out of these weeks or months of not necessarily making new visible features. The last bit of the chapter is all about the power of veto, namely the power of people to keep a project from getting released if they don't think its quality is on the level where it needs to be. And the authors cite an example of Hitachi software in Japan where they do this kind of thing. Understandably, Hitachi is in a privileged position where, they as a company have a lot of resources, and they're one of the biggest companies in the world, I think. And so it's a little easier for them to have that kind of culture. But even if you and I are not in companies that are on that level, it's we are somewhere on that spectrum of business size, and that is a cultural value that's worth trying to inject, into your team and spreading throughout the organization. And that's something that does take some intentionality, but it's definitely worth doing. Again, it's going to make the individual contributors feel more empowered. They probably know their bit of the product more than anyone, and so they're going to feel like it's within what they're supposed to do to speak up, to prioritize quality, and that's going to have good business outcomes down the road for you. So that's all for chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one.